In this episode, I am going to share my story. I had bariatric surgery. It's been 7 years ago, and I just want to share with you my journey. And I'm going to be doing more solo episodes, just scattered in and about, just taking a break to sit with you directly and share some of my thoughts, some of my takeaways, and give you an opportunity to comment some of yours. What have we learned so far? What are we looking toward next? See if some of your curiosities for the future episodes are where mine land as well. But today, I'm going to share my own bariatric story, my lessons that I've learned. I'd just love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hi, friends. I am bringing you my first solo episode. So this is not an interview with any of the successful maintainers. I just realized that I haven't shared my own story. So today I want to share my story with you as a successful maintainer. So this story is, 58 years in the making. And really, I want to share the biggest highlights for me, the things that I think contributed the most. And as you know, when I start my interviews, I usually start with tell me about life before bariatric surgery and how that sort of led up to the decision. So, one of the things that I think was sort of pivotal as I reflect back was a time that I was working in a job that was fine, but it wasn't one that I loved. I was working with people that I absolutely adored, but the job itself wasn't that exciting. And someone asked me if it was one that was secure enough, though, that I could, be there for, it would carry me through to retirement. And when she asked, I just had this vision of my future. And it was the first time that it frightened me because I did know other people, women in particular, who were in that role that were close to retirement, that had been in that role for a long time, and they had become very jaded, like physically unhealthy. Mentally, they just were not joyous people. They were very critical. And I just thought, ooh, I do not want that. It actually scared me. I was like, okay, this cannot happen. And that that was a few years before, but it's really the first time that my future was in my sights. And the next few years saw a lot of change. Number one, I ended up moving out of that job, and um, and then I actually I was laid off, so I was looking for work, and my future became more about what I was crafting at the time. Um, I do have to say that kind of fast forward to a time that I realized that my health had declined to the point that, when I say my health, I mean I was my heaviest. I was 255 pounds on a 5'3" frame, and my back was, I had so much back pain that I couldn't really even walk farther than maybe a block and without having to rest. And that time was much closer to my bariatric surgery time. That was when I was realizing that I can't exercise, and that's the only way that I had known to really lose weight. yes, diet it was really important, but for me, if I couldn't move regularly, particularly like go to the gym and lift something heavy, I I wasn't able to have the motivation to eat any differently. So those things went together for me. But if I wasn't able to change my movement patterns, um, it felt like another nail in the coffin. And my mm, just the darkness surrounding me just was closing in. My own thoughts, my own um, hope was dying. And then I went to a salon to get my nails done, make me feel better. And the woman next to me was talking about how much fun she'd had that morning riding bicycles with her husband and was talking about her experience having had bariatric surgery. And prior to that, it still really kind of slays me that I didn't know that bariatric surgery was really an option. It was sort of one of those things that just was sounded too good to be true. It was like a a scam somehow. People that had had it, everybody loses, but then they gain it all back. And it just costs a lot of money. And it's not the real answer. You always have to just, buckle down and make it happen through sheer willpower. And this woman had had bariatric surgery and had lost her weight and was living an amazing life that she enjoyed sharing at her nail appointment right next to me. So I thought, I'm going to investigate a little bit. So I found a bariatric program. There isn't one in my town, but I found one and thought they're having an information session. Can't hurt to just go to that and see what they have to say for themselves. And I went, and my mom went with me. And we both thought, hey, that might be something I could do. It sounds like there's science that says it can work. So I took the next step and I scheduled the next appointment to have the first evaluation. And that seemed to go okay. I actually would qualify. Wow. Okay. So I just started taking the next step and then the next step and then the step after that. And frankly, every time I kept thinking, okay, this is where I will find that I'm not a candidate or it's not right or. And it wasn't until the step that involved my insurance company that I found that it wouldn't work for me, at least in the States. But I had been doing my homework also, and I had been learning that if it's not an option in the States, it might be an option in Mexico. But then I'd also watched Botched, and I'd also heard all of the scare tactics about, you know, also losing a kidney while I was at it, or whatever the things are. All of the fears and all of the myths, I heard those too. But I did my research and I continued to interview people that had had it done, interview people that thought that it didn't work, interview people that had some some science around it. And I found an option. And I joined the one of the things that I really appreciate that helped me make my decision was I joined the Facebook group for that. In fact, I joined a few different ones. And then I watched. I watched the conversations that happened. I watched how the administrators kept the spaces safe, which led me to think that maybe they kept their patients safe outside of that environment as well. If they cared enough to keep the social media space safe, did they keep their communications and their priorities for their patients in all of their interactions? Did they keep them safe emotionally and otherwise? I watched how the people in those spaces communicated with each other. I watched information being disseminated that might or might not be true or inaccurate. I watched admins hop in and correct wrong information. I watched others let it run wild. So that was one of the ways that I helped inform myself about the experience or the um, surgeon and the program that I would use. I also found a surgeon that had the ASMBS credential. And what that is, it's actually the program credential. So the ASMBS, that stands for the American Society of Metabolic and Bariatric Surgeons. And that is really the only accreditation body that I know of that determines if a program is can be accredited. And there's a lot of hoops that insurance companies make us jump through, not all of which are, I agree with. Again, who am I? But that's just my thinking. Um, but the ASMBS has um, guidelines and requirements for accreditation, all of which I do agree with. And so I found a surgeon whose program was accredited and in Mexico. And so that was a big consideration for me. Anyway, I found a program and I decided to pursue it. And again, one step at a time, reach out, see, do I qualify? What was their program? What would be required? How much? I mean, all of those things, just one step at a time. And each time that I came up against a question or an obstacle or whatever, I just um, approached it as, can I get through this? And each time I found a way, just like my insurance company said, we're not going to cover this. It's not a benefit. I work at a hospital and the hospital self-funds um, their insurance program. So yes, it's through a big name that we all know, but it's their plan. So they get to decide, the hospital gets to decide what's covered and what isn't. So I connected with a wellness director at the hospital, and we together presented to the insurance committee. We presented a proposal for why we thought bariatric surgery should be covered and took questions and showed them how it's actually the standard of care, which is the thing that tells providers, look, before you go jumping into any surgery, these are the things you need to go through first. And then after you go through those things, surgery is the next science-based reason or step in treatment. So that's what standard of care is. And when bariatric surgery is actually the standard of care in the treatment of obesity, which is a chronic disease. That was determined, I think, in like 2012. Obesity has been uh, designated as a chronic disease, just like cancer, just like COPD, just like other diseases that have lasting effects. Even when you lose all your weight, your body has been changed forever. And so, even with that presentation, the hospital, as of today, still does not cover bariatric surgery. But that did not stop me from looking for alternatives. And so I found mine. During that time, while I was going through this, I also found this is another, I think, turning point for me. I found a woman who taught and held um, body positive yoga retreats. And her name is Amber Carnes, and I love her. I went to her retreat and I was surrounded by women in big bodies just like mine. And we were all learning together to move and love our bodies in ways that didn't hurt, in ways that were actually fulfilling to us physically and emotionally and mentally, learning and stretching ourselves and being surrounded with the love and support of each other. And that was also a big turning point for me, that I could love this body at whatever size. I could fuel it. I could provide nutrition to this body and not punish it. You know, when I interviewed Beth in one of our previous podcasts, and she was talking about not using the gym as punishment and shifting that perspective, that in some way we had to punish ourselves for being fat, that that was a crime. And and it doesn't work like that. Um, Shaming ourselves is not at all helpful. And in fact, it prevents us from the very thing that will heal us, and that is acceptance and self-love, right? So that was part of what was going on while I was on my journey to getting bariatric surgery. And really, I'd say it took me about 3 years from the time that I decided to Google bariatric programs in my area to actually having surgery. So it was definitely a journey leading up to. And a lot of people do it for their children or do it for their families. And I didn't have that reason, but for me, living was enough because I had gotten very close to my very darkest moments and to deciding that this wasn't a life that I wanted to continue, but also realizing that I was worth it, and my extended family and everything that all of the connections that I have in this life and my future could be different. And it was worth me making different choices. Another thing that I often ask my interviewees, my guests on the podcast, is about how relationships change, because I hear that in this community a lot. And I think we mentioned at one point, even there's this statistic. I don't know how relevant it is, not relevant, but I don't know how accurate it is today. But I heard a statistic that 50% of bariatric patients post-ops uh, result in divorce. Their relationships, their marriages result in divorce. Um, and for whatever reason, could be the patient or the person decides that the relationship isn't working for them. Could be the spouse decides that it's a threat, that they're now being seen by other men, and that's whatever. Lots of reasons. But I'm always interested in how relationships change when a big change like this happens, because we don't stay the same. And a lot of people choose not to share their decision to have bariatric surgery. And I absolutely respect that, because not everybody has earned the right to be a part of that conversation and to have an opinion about a very, very personal decision, right? And so if they need to be safe and protect that decision, um, I respect that. For me, I tell everybody, I'm pretty much an open book. If you ask or if you stick around long enough, I'll tell you about it, because um, because it's a great story to share and it's healing, and I would love other people to have this same experience. Um, I told everybody around me that I was having it, and I was very supported. I did have people that were concerned, and I had done enough research and was very confident in my decision to have conversations um, that shared why I felt comfortable and why I didn't share their concern, but really appreciated them trying to support me. Um, After surgery, uh, what I found was consistent with what I have also heard can sometimes happen, and that is if relationships are strong before some big change, whatever that change is, like bariatric surgery, then those relationships will be more of that after. If they're strong before, they will be even stronger after. If they are not strong and weak before, they will become even weaker and they will have more struggles. And that's was my experience. So I mentioned that my mom went with me to the information session, and mom was with me on every step of my journey before and after. She didn't have bariatric surgery, but she dove all in with me. We both started walking more. We both started eating differently. And she has lost her weight and has been at her ideal weight without bariatric surgery, but right alongside me, and continues to this day. Both of us feel like we are healthier than we've ever been in our lives. That's one example of the kind of relationships that I had before and that I have even more of now. I've had people, though, that, like I say, tried to be supportive in their own way and share their concerns or their stories, but it didn't really faze me because I felt really confident in my decision and had a lot of other support around me. I have watched other relationships change. The biggest ones that I notice and am sad about are in general public, like jobs. So when I lost weight and became the picture that everybody wants to see in their employee or in their company, I found that I was promoted. I was believed. My opinion seemed to matter more in the general public. Now, I do have to say, the job that I have at the hospital is a little bit different because I didn't experience it as much there in the people that I had worked with directly. They knew me, they knew my work ethic, they knew what I could do, and have always been supported by them. People in the hospital that didn't know me before, that, whether it was a committee that I was on or whatever, opinions change. Everybody's very professional, but you can tell. And I think that this came up with my interview with Samantha. She noticed it. We notice. And it's just very sad that it's confirming to me the discrimination against people with obesity. People who are in large bodies experience it all the time. And if they grew up with it, they don't even know that that's really happening because it's been happening forever. It's not until it stops and all of a sudden you're given a project because, well, you're the expert. You know this. You can do this. Well, I know that, but you know that? It's like being seen, and not just being seen and criticized, but being seen and respected. That's a big change that happened for me and that happens for bariatric patients. So that's part of my story as well. So along with that is this notion of feeling invisible as a person in a very large body. Obviously, there's not real invisibility and people notice the fat people, but they immediately look away. So there is a feeling, at least I'll speak for myself, um, but I don't think I'm alone. I do know that I experienced that invisibility where I could walk through the mall, I could walk down the street, I could walk whatever, sit in a room, whatever, and nobody was going to stare or make comments or whatever about the fat woman. The feeling is there, but there's this sense of being invisible. And then after bariatric surgery in a different body, we're definitely not invisible and people see us. They saw me. And that can sometimes be a little jarring. It is uncomfortable to be seen. It's also one of those emotional transitions that we have to make where bariatric surgery doesn't do anything for our emotions. It only is a procedure done on our stomach and sometimes our intestines. But the emotional journey is the real one. And mental health is really important. And that's one of the aspects that is very important to be aware of going into bariatric surgery. The ASMBS guidelines require that programs have some kind of support, whether it's support groups or, and that's, available before or after. They need to make that available. And there's some education that they're required to have, but it's usually, minimal. And each program can decide how they're going to roll that out. I don't think that it's given enough attention. It's really critical to have support for mental health after bariatric surgery, to know what you're getting into before bariatric surgery and to start preparing for that. But there's nothing that you can do to prepare for the cloak being dropped from your invisibility and being seen and getting attention from men that you might not enjoy or that might trigger past traumas. I think Michelle mentioned the experience of the excess skin being like a phantom limb. And there's this feeling of not just being invisible, but still taking up as much space as we did in our previous body. And so, I still have that today. I forget that I only take up this much space and I can actually fit through that group of people. I don't have to make way and, you know, part the sea in order to get through to the ladies' room or whatever the situation is. It's part of our um, mental growth and reconciling our past with our reality today. And I know for me, I walked before I started walking right after bariatric surgery. I couldn't beforehand. Um, and so, right after bariatric surgery, in fact, literally after my bariatric surgery, they got us up that afternoon and had us walk in the halls. And I continued walking. And when I got home, that was my absolutely daily practice. No day that I didn't go for a walk. And it wasn't just a physical benefit. For me, it was my mental health. And I noticed how much it helped. It was time for me to process. It was time for me to have time to myself. I would have friends that wanted to come and walk with me. And I do enjoy walking with friends now. But the days that I was walking by myself were the most fulfilling and nurturing to my mental wellness. That's just me. But it was critical to help me process all of the changes happening. And when we change our diet, then people really have a lot to say about it, about how we're eating and the choices we're making and whether we're eating grandma's favorite, you know, traditional dish at Thanksgiving or whatever the thing is. We're not having the birthday cake at little Timmy's birthday party. It's all of those changes matter. And for some, there are cultural changes. I mean, cultural expectations that are really hard to navigate. Um, I didn't really experience that again in my family. Everybody was very supportive, but I know others have. That's a journey in itself. It's hard enough to make the choices for ourselves, right? But when we are making those choices amongst other people, it's part of that emotional journey and you're being seen. You're not eating the same way. You're no longer invisible and people are having something to say about it. But that's okay. It's an opportunity for you to be really okay with you first. And at the end of the day, nobody is going to force a spoonful in your mouth of anything you don't want. And so sometimes you might have to, you know, not be grandma's favorite. You might not have to be, or you might have to be, you know, a rebel. That is part of what brought this wild rebel wellness into existence is my journey in realizing that I might make some people mad that I'm not eating what they want me to or moving the way that they want me to, that I'm going to the wrong gym or that I am, you know, taking the easy way out. They don't know. They don't know. And people who don't know and aren't educated and have any opinion about me don't get to matter if it's not with kindness and with love in their hearts. So I mentioned that before bariatric surgery, I my mental health was not well. My physical health was not well. My back hurt horribly, back pain. I had and still have an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And in general, I was not able to do the things that the insurance company guidelines usually require, which includes exercise in order to lose weight. I was not able to lose weight before um, my bariatric surgery. And that's one of those sticking points that there's also, to my knowledge, there is no evidence. There is no science that says that outcomes are better if you can lose weight and be successful before bariatric surgery than if you can afterward. Yes, you get a taste of how to exercise and and you start that habit. But there is nothing that says that you can't do it after. And that was all I needed to be able to say, and I will. And then after bariatric surgery, I prioritized my mental health and I started walking. And I think I mentioned in one of the episodes that I also learned that my thyroid condition was an autoimmune condition. That's when I learned was after surgery. And it wasn't from my bariatric program. It wasn't from my primary care provider. It was from a functional medicine doctor who um, I told her that my antibodies had been out of range, like significantly out of range. And she's the one that said, well, that's an autoimmune condition. That was a point that I learned that I could ramp up my nutrition even more. And I took more control of my diet and nutrition. And that had a significant effect on my mental wellness as well. So my physical condition changed from obviously being very overweight, but my back, I haven't had back pain since. My thyroid condition, because I had been on levothyroxine, on prescription medication for so long, that just masks the damage that continues to be done to the thyroid. And so my thyroid is pretty damaged, but it is healing. And I have actually reduced the need for my prescription. My dosage has changed because I'm actively healing it. This is another thing that, again, in the conventional medical wisdom says that autoimmune conditions are just you're stuck with it for the rest of your life, and that just simply isn't always true. Um, it has not been for me, and it's not been for a lot of people that I know. So because my conventional doctors had not even been willing to test antibodies or to look at my autoimmune condition as something I might have some agency over. That was another point. You'll notice that there are several throughout my story, but it was another point that I realized being my own advocate is so important. And it's one of the things that I help my clients to have productive conversations with their doctors, all of their doctors, and seek out the things that their doctors say, no, I won't do that for you. It doesn't mean it can't be done. If they won't test the things that you want to know about in your body, there are ways that you can have that done. There are doctors that will support you. There is healing that is possible. You just have to be your own best advocate and have a cheerleader in your corner to help you. So, for the people that talk to me about bariatric surgery that are in the space of just considering, is it for them or not? Um, I never tell them that bariatric surgery is always the solution or that it's the solution for everybody. It is very personal choice. And there are a lot of things to consider. So, for someone who is considering bariatric surgery and feels like it's the right decision, and the only reason they aren't proceeding is because they're worried about what other people will think, or whether it will be successful for them, whether they will be part of those statistics of people that just regain. If they're doing it for anybody else, or they're not doing it because of fears, any kind of fear, um, those are great conversations to have with somebody that can help determine if the reality of your body and your outcomes, if that's a decision for you or not. That's something that can be done with a coach. It's something that can be done with a bariatric program. But bariatric surgery isn't for everybody. And um, it is definitely not the easy option. Definitely not the easy option. There is still a lot of work, but it does change things physically and it does change things mentally, not the surgery, but the outcome. And I do know that it has given a lot of people, including me, a life that would not have been possible without it. I do know that if I personally had any regret, it's that I didn't do it so many years sooner and gotten started on this amazing life that I have now. So, last thoughts are reach out and talk with people about it until you are confident. And when you are, go for it. And if you are, when you are confident, choose to not be that statistic. And even if you have regained some since surgery, or even if you've hit a plateau, that's not the end. You're still in the game. you can still have the life that you want, the life that you dreamed of, that set you on the path. You can still have it. I really encourage anybody that is struggling with the mental health aspect of bariatric surgery after life after bariatric surgery. It's hard to find. I'll tell you. I struggled to find a counselor that was experienced with bariatric life. There's more options now than there were when I was first looking. And um, and I really encourage you to not stop looking for support in that way. Um, I actually have found that's one of the things that my clients really appreciate is just navigating that aspect of life after bariatric surgery. Yes, we talk about nutrition. Yes, we talk about movement, but we often talk about how we can process all of the emotions that come up that might be new and ones that aren't new that we thought we dealt with and are coming up in new ways. So that's one of the things that I really enjoy supporting with my clients. And honestly, if you are having any desire for support after bariatric surgery, I would love to just talk with you about your experience and what challenges you're facing now. No big no big pressure, but it's something that I'm really interested in and I really love helping with. So, connect with me. All of the ways you can have all of the buttons, all of the shares and subscribes and the DMs and the ways to get a hold of me, but you can always find support and I can help you find support. So one of the things that you've heard mentioned is that I had my surgery in Mexico. And a lot of my guests have. And I will tell you that actually, not a lot of people know this. That was not my first journey outside of the States for medical treatment. Actually, my first, and I didn't know I was blazing the medical tourism trail at the time, but I want to say it was like maybe 1997, 98, I went to Canada and I had LASIK surgery. It was before it was a big deal here in the US. The US had not done a lot of procedures, but Canada had been doing it for a long time. And they were like, oh, yeah, that. And so actually, several friends and I went up together and had LASIK surgery, and it was phenomenal. I loved it. We drove up. They had a hotel that they arranged for us to stay in. There was a shuttle between the hotel and the treatment center. It was such a smooth process and very easy healing for me, and I loved it and have loved it ever since. They set very realistic expectations. And so that was my first experience going outside of the US. When the US didn't step up, I was like, okay, well, other people have got this. And so maybe it was just easier for me to consider going to Mexico. But one of the things that I want to bring in my next series is, what is this deal with medical tourism? Is it everything that everybody says? What are the disadvantages? And can they be mitigated? Can we accentuate all of the positives? Is it an option for everybody? And I'm just really curious about all of it. And so, as you know, I'm going to take you with me on this journey, and we'll see where it takes us. But that's the next episode that you can look forward to.